What up, YouTube? Good morning. It's about 3 a.m. here. I woke up, and every once in a while, like maybe once a month or once every 2 months, I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and I know it's like I'm not going back to sleep. So I just get up. Usually I have pretty vivid dreams. This instance, I had what I call a DeSisto dream, where I'm like locked up and I can't get out. And it's usually, after all these years, it's not about actual DeSisto, which I can barely remember, at least not in like thick, vivid detail. But it's about being trapped, being confined, being a prisoner, basically. So, anyways, I'm going to talk about that. I've been wanting to discuss it for a long time, but it's it's big, and I'm not sure where to start. I've written some stuff down, but I'm not referring to any notes. I'm just gonna speak about it, and hopefully this won't be the last time I speak about it, and hopefully I can collaborate with some other people who've been there. Being in an experience like that, it kind of feels like you're some like last tribesman of some culture that's dead now, and you and like three other people speak the language, and soon it'll fade into history. I mean, I suppose you could make the argument that every life is like that. Every life is full of experiences no one else will understand, and once you're gone, no one will really know what you've been through. But anyway, DeSisto is a unique place. It's founded by Michael DeSisto, who was probably a narcissist and definitely a cult leader. I mean, you could Wikipedia some details. I did when, I first, I Googled it. Well, before Google, what was it, Alta Vista? Anyway, I remember reading about it a bit and other people's experiences, but I haven't looked into any of this in over a decade. Someday, hopefully, there'll be a documentary about it. There was one about Elon School, which my parents almost sent me to. What was it called? Surprisingly, it's available on Amazon now. I think Prime Video, The Crazy School or something like that. ELON. Anyway, I think it's or is it Elon, like Elon Musk? Anyway, messed up place, but not today's topic. So I got sent there in 1995. At the time, the school had about 80 kids. Oh yeah, I was talking about Michael DeSisto. He'd actually originally worked at another boarding school, and he got fired for his crazy beliefs or whatever. Who knows how the story actually went down? And but a bunch of parents were really attached to him, so he started his own boarding school, and like 20 people withdrew their kids from that school. I should really look into these details more. Maybe I will in the next video or put it in the comments. But this was maybe 20, 30 years before I got sent there. Anyway, I got sent there in 95. And yeah, when you're 16, you feel like, on one hand, you're like hopelessly insecure, but on the other hand, you think you've been through stuff, and you think you're like ready for anything, and you're kind of excited about things, even bad experiences. You're just, like beat me up, like hurt me. I don't know. That's just like, you just don't care. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. I mean, I cared, but I wanted to like feel something, even if it took like some bad experiences. Now, ironically, I think like the experiences I went through make it harder for me to feel things, except like general aggravation. Like a lot of I don't know. I used to think it was a man thing because like my girlfriends would cry and I wouldn't cry. I just kind of look at them and like a specimen. Like I understand you're upset, but like why would you cry in front of me? I mean, I've cried in front of people before. Let me get on with it. So 95, my parents drove me up to this place in I think the station wagon, the Ford Taurus. I had my computer in the back, back in the day, a computer was like a big production. Nowadays, everyone has these like sleek, skinny laptops. But, it's like a big, bulky Macintosh LC, I think, with like a big, ugly monitor. And yeah, it was cool. I really loved that thing at the time. Um, and the other kids were just like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, they're not gonna let you keep this thing. And but even that, what was it? 6 months previous, I was at this school called the Family School, which was another like wackadoo crazy school. The family was based on like it was like kind of Christian and based on like Alcoholics Anonymous, and they were just like, oh yeah, you're all a bunch of addicts and little junkies. And I'm like, I never even drank. I never even did anything bad. I never even kissed a girl. What am I doing here? But yeah, they just drilled him into that you're like a sinner and you need to repent and all this stuff. And they had the corner and crazy stuff like that. So the corner is basically solitary confinement. You're just sitting facing the corner like I guess they used to do to kids. Like, who knows when they used to do to kids in the 1900s? I don't know. And yeah, they like wouldn't feed you, or yeah, I'll tell you a funny family school story before I get started on the DeSisto thing. So they had the this is the one of the weirdest things, even by DeSisto standards. They didn't do this, but they would give everyone the exact same food, and that was it. That's what you eat. You didn't get to choose your own food. Like, they just threw the slop on your plate, and that's what you get. And it didn't matter. I remember this girl was a vegetarian. They were like, we don't care. Today we're having meat. You're gonna eat this. And just trying to be tough guys and trying to like be like, you kids like are too soft, and this is how it's gonna go down. And I remember there's this one morning they gave me cream of wheat, and I don't know if you know what cream of wheat is, but it's like a disgusting version of oatmeal. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not gonna eat it. And they're like, all right, you sit in the corner, face the wall, don't talk to anybody, don't look at anybody, and you're not getting any food except this. So we're gonna like give it to you every meal until you eat it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna eat it. So anyway, long story. I sat there for a little over a day, I think. I mean, I had water to drink, and they let me get up to use the bathroom. That was one thing DeSisto didn't necessarily do all the time. Um, and yeah, I just didn't eat this cream of wheat. It was disgusting. And then finally, I'm like, yo, okay, fine, I'll eat it. And they sent this kid, this like Asian kid, like a year or two older than me. That's one thing that DeSisto and the family school had in common. They both had these like kiss ass kids that were like a little older than the regular students. And DeSisto, they called them stewards. They had their own dorm. And it's a good way to save money. If you're a cult, you don't have to hire that many staff because you just have the kids like rule over the other kids, Lord of the Fly style. So this kid's like, you're going to eat your cream of wheat now, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, give it to me. So I gave it to him, and I poured it all over his head, and it was dripping down his face. It was pretty funny. The one thing about family school, you could get away with stuff more. It wasn't as violent as DeSisto. I mean, there was some violence there. So obviously I didn't eat that cream of wheat off the kid's face. I don't remember what my punishment was after that. But after that, I did eat every gross thing that they gave me in the perfect proportions they gave me. I couldn't ask for less. I couldn't ask for more. But so that was my first experience of the corner. So when I got to DeSisto and I saw all the craziness, I think I reacted maybe less reactively than most of the other kids who showed up there. I mean, there was some weirder stuff at DeSisto than family school. For instance, you could never be alone at all, ever. You had to be in groups of 3, at least. This was in the lower dorms. I started at an alternate new boys, which on paper was like a higher dorm, more privileges than new boys, but I don't really remember any privileges. The privileges we had were like pretty scant. And then below new boys was the boys' farm, and then they had the girls' farm. Although eventually, while I was there, those got closed down. And then above new boys and alternate new boys was normal kids. This is like no joke. It was actually called normal kids. And like this was like when I first got there, I'm like, oh, this is like halfway up the mountain, but it's really pretty close to the top because it's just normal kids and then stewards. And stewards are like the student staff who get to like dominate the other dorms. They're kind of like prison guards who are former prisoners. Hmm. So anyway, alternative new boys. And yeah, you could never be alone. You had to be like shadowed by people at all times. Even going to the loo, as they say here in England, even going to the restroom, you had to bring two other kids with you. So every time you had to pee or crap, you like had to bring two kids with you. It's messed up. And like, yeah, if you were, I don't know, wow, why were we hand holded? You had to like hold hands with other kids. And like as a teenage boy, even a teenage girl, I'm sure you're not feeling this. Like, I don't want to hold another dude's hand. Like, but yeah, we had to hold hands when we were out, I guess, to keep kids from running away if we weren't trusted enough. And then yeah, you had to sleep in front of the door. They did that at the family school too. Another, I won't go off on a tangent right now, but yeah, there was a time I was gonna run away and I almost did a really bad thing, but I didn't do it. But yeah, so this was a fire hazard. It's against the law, but I mean, a lot of the things they did was against the law. They would, sleep like six to a room, sometimes eight, and someone would always be like on a mattress in front of the door, and so presumably you'd have to wake that kid up to escape. Although somehow once or twice I was the most trusted kid in the room in various times, and like people just pulled my mattress gently out of the way. Evidently, I was a pretty heavy sleeper at that time, and kids did escape. And with that in mind, that's another thing. There was all this group accountability, which supposedly was supposed to make us like closer together. Like you couldn't even do your own laundry; someone else had to do your laundry, and you did someone else's laundry. And if someone did something and they told you about it, you had to rat them out. And yeah, supposedly it was going to make us closer, like we were all accountable for each other. But yeah, it didn't really work like that. The whole turn in thing, there was this thing called turn ins, and everyone would like be silenced, like you wouldn't be allowed to talk, and everyone would just sit on couches with pen and paper, and you had to write what you think you were in trouble for. And of course, this was like a crazy, vicious circle, like dominoes falling, knocking over the other dominoes, because you'd be like, I would just want to get out of here. So you might be like, oh, Joe told me he was thinking about running away. And then they had that on Joe, and then Joe would be like, I don't know, I heard like Mike say the F word like three times. You weren't allowed to curse. Well, actually, no, you could curse, you just couldn't say the F word. Um, and then people would just, oh, I saw Spencer steal some food that he wasn't supposed to have. And then, yeah, the more stuff was said, the more stuff that every other person had to say. But of course, some of the stuff was so small. Who's going to remember if you stole some food once, or you like said the F word, or you like mused about running away? So, um, yeah, so that was turn-ins. They had cutesy names for everything. Like if you tackled someone who was doing something bad and it was sanctioned, it was called the limit structure. So it's not restraining someone; it's a limit structure. You're limiting their freedom and movement. And yeah, that happened more. Like if you just did something you weren't supposed to do, like you could just get tackled and like slammed against the wall and thrown in the corner. And if you were saying something and someone didn't want you to talk, you would get silenced, and then you weren't allowed to talk. And then you would sit in the corner. And if you continued to talk, every word you said, you had to write a page. One time I got up to like 60 pages. I was just, I mean, actually the pages were like one of the most therapeutic parts of the school, billed as a therapeutic boarding school. Yeah, I wrote so many pages. I wrote like poetry and stories. Like the poetry stuff is embarrassing. I mean, I still kind of think poetry is pretty lame. Not that it's intrinsically lame, but just that 99% of it is like really crummy. But I got into Walt Whitman there. I did do some reading. Yeah, the best in the corner is if you were at least facing a window, because then you could look out. I remember when I went to the farm, there was like this bird feeder there, and it was winter, and it was so desolate and dark, and but at least I could feed the birds and watch the birds. Maybe that's when I became a hippie. Um, but yeah, it was messed up. Like And if you were trying to be on the up and up and someone was acting up, you were expected to restrain them. Um, yeah, and there was just all these rules. You can't do X until Y. Like every Saturday would be super cleanup, they called it. I mean, every day we had to clean in the morning. Um, but with super cleanup, you didn't get to eat until it was done, and someone would come around with their like finger and like feel the ledges, and if there was dust, you'd have to do everything all over again, even the stuff you already did. One time we didn't eat till like 8 p.m. Breakfast at 8 p.m. and yeah, and sometimes you'd get dorms, you'd get rooms. Everything had an ed added to the end of it. It's popped. Like a word could be popped if someone was being annoying and saying the same word like too much. They'd be like, "Oh, that word is popped." And if you say that word, then you have to sit in the corner. And then you have to do pages. And yeah, this poor chubby kid, he had a food buddy, and the food buddy got to control what they ate. So like the food buddy, if he was, you know, an a hole, he could like sit in front of the kid and like eat donuts. I mean, we rarely got dessert, especially when you were farmed, which was like 95% of the time. So there was the farm, and then your dorm could get farmed, which meant you were basically like totally isolated from the rest of the campus. You couldn't talk to other dorms. You definitely couldn't talk to the opposite sex. Um, yeah, but anyway, this kid's food buddy would like eat in front of him and then give him like a tiny amount of food. And they just got away with that. I mean, the kid was overweight, but this is like a really messed up thing to do to somebody. And but yeah, dormed, farmed. I wrote a report on this school for college. I made it somehow like sociologically relevant to the topic. Well, yeah, I called it the class stratification system of the DeSisto School because like we were learning about like class structures, but it was really I was just too lazy to actually like study another culture. So I'm like, let me just throw this in. This is like my crazy experience. I'll probably at least get a B because like they don't want to make me feel bad about myself. Like that I like went through this, and I did go into a lot of detail. I remember I wrote it on my old iMac. I spent like an hour and a half. I wrote 15 pages, like stream of consciousness. Mm. Yeah, so yeah, when you were in the corner, you had to like raise your hand if you wanted to talk. You had to raise your hand if you wanted to go to the bathroom. Sometimes they'd like deny you going to the bathroom. Sometimes they deny you food. This all got better, and like a lot of the extreme stuff got better in like 1996, late 19. Wait, yeah, I went in 95. Yeah, late 96, because the Department of Social Services was like investigating the school really hardcore. But DeSisto had like some good lawyers, so he didn't get shut down. But a lot of the more punitive stuff, like restraints, like putting people in zip ties and leaving them corner, gagging people for like talking when they were in the corner. Yeah, the more extreme violence and like human rights violations, like not letting people eat or go to the bathroom stopped. But yeah, what was I talking about? Super clean. Oh yeah, yeah. Early on, one of the things like that that really like threw me off was like not allowing people to go to the bathroom when they needed to go. Like yeah, I was in my room, and we were all rooms. Yeah, rooms popped. Your clothing could be popped. I remember just our mattresses were popped. We were sleeping on the floor like a bunch of teenage boys in our underpants, like pissing out the window. But this was number two, so I needed to go, and this kid was like blocking the door, and he's like, "No." I'm just like, I don't know. And he just had this smug look on his face, and he was like, he just had this sense of himself as like this tough guy. And I'm not selling this story to make myself a tough guy, because I was on the receiving end of abuse far more than I was dishing it out to anybody. But I just like had to hit him, and I just like hit him a few times, and he like fell and he hit his head against the wall. He ended up going to the hospital, which that part I'm not proud of. But I mean, he just had a mild concussion. But I just remember sitting on the toilet and just being like that's what you get. My girl's 4-year-old says that now, because her mom says it to her when she like does something stupid and like something bad happens to her. That's what you get, and then she says it back to her mom. That's what you get, mommy. But anyway, like it's just messed up. You just can't do that to people. And there were so many kids who just shouldn't have been there. They should have been in well, I hesitate to say should, like should be in a psychiatric hospital. Like, I mean, these kids just needed a lot from their families and communities that they just were not getting. And but some of these kids were really like did have severe mental problems. This one boy, he had like weird bubbles on his skin. I think he'd gotten in a bad fire when he was young. This like skinny white kid. I mean, I was also a skinny white kid. I was like, when I got there, I was like 6'2.5", like my same height now, about 140 pounds. Although in the throes of my disordered eating in my early 20s, I would get like even 20 pounds below that, so like 118. Can you believe that? 6'2.5", 118. But anyway, yeah, some other kids called me Bones. But anyway, this other skinny white kid, he was just crazy. Like he would just be like a normal jerk, but then sometimes he would just start screaming and people would restrain him. And whoever was restraining them, he would just throw anything at them. There was this dorm parent named Marcus, and he was black, and so this kid would just sell this racist stuff to him. Or if someone was fat, or if someone, anything, or if someone in a dorm meeting had revealed that they'd been molested, that would get thrown in their face. I mean, it was really messed up because you get all these kids, and then you force them to talk about their feelings. You put them in these meetings, and of course, like you can't force that out of someone, and you put all these kids in a pressure cooker situation, and kids are going to throw stuff back in their face. So kids who've been molested and abused and all this stuff would have stuff thrown in their face. And yeah, and then there was this other kid. He was definitely should have been in a mental hospital. He like tried to escape by jumping through a window once, but it was a giant plate glass window, and he didn't go through it. He just kind of bounced off. I mean, it's a good thing he didn't go through it. He would have, who knows, he could have. Do you die if you jump through a plate glass window and it breaks? I mean, I know in the movies you don't die, but like all those shards of glass could go in your neck and your arms. Anyway, and he tried to run away on a work crew once, and like people tackled him and they like threw snow up his vest, and this poor kid. But yeah, work crews were another thing. When you were farmed, you didn't get to go to school. Like going to school was a privilege. I went to school like in the 2 years I was there, I was in class maybe 4 weeks because either I was on the farm or the dorm was farmed. So yeah, the farm is like the lowest structure. On the farm, you were like invisible. You weren't allowed to make eye contact with other people except like staff members on the farm, or other kids on the farm. And sometimes it'd just be a few kids. When I was there, for a while, it was just me and this one kid, Mike Taylor, the skinny black kid. He was pretty nuts. Yeah, I felt bad for him. I don't know what his deal was, but most of these kids, you didn't know what their deal was. You'd assume, and I mean, a lot of the kids, they stole stuff, they did drugs, they like didn't listen to their parents. But some kids were like me. They just were like in a few schools before this and on medication, and dropped out of school and were just staying home, and their parents just didn't know what to do with them. And the kids were like abused for sure, but the parents were also fleeced financially. This was like, I mean, the school cost like 50 grand a month in like 1990s dollars, and they promised therapy and they promised this and that, and I don't know how much the staff were making at the time, but very little. Um, Very little, and they were just recruiting out of newspaper ads, and I don't know if you even had to have an undergraduate degree. You certainly didn't have to have a psychology degree or like experience with kids. And it's like I said, sometimes it would just be kids and another kid monitoring the dorm. Yeah, I don't want to really get into all my experiences here. I'm starting to get tired because, like I said, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I just felt inspired to record this. But also, I feel like it would be much more entertaining and educational and memorable in a dialogue format. So I'm hoping that I can do some collabs with people who've been at this school. And you know how it is when you're talking to another human and they tell you like a war story, and then that spurs your imagination. And just to know that someone else understands what you're going through. Yeah, all these silly little things. I remember the couches there, and you had to have both feet on the floor. You couldn't even cross your legs, because you were supposed to be more present and more serious when both your feet were on the floor. All these words you couldn't say. Yeah, the force talking about your feelings. Um, yeah, yes, and oh yeah, I was talking about the parents. Yeah, the parents were just sold a bill of goods by the teachers. I mean, by DeSisto. Oh yeah, and then the staff turnover was crazy. Imagine like the most crazy staff turnover of any job you've ever been or anyone you've ever known who've worked somewhere. Like, yeah, you had 6 weeks, like, and then after that you were supposed to make a 2 year commitment, and in the 2 year commitment you like agreed to be a staff member for 2 years. And out of the after the 6 weeks, like half of people just left. They were just like, yo, I don't want to do this to these kids. And then out of the people who made their 2 year commitment, I think I knew only one staff member who actually kept his or her 2 year commitment. And I mean, I don't blame these people because, yeah, they get kind of roped into the cult as well. And I mean, I don't know, it must be highly entertaining to work there and just see all these crazy kids. You're in like some crazy alternative universe, like different country that's like not the United States, where like these kids have no rights. And from a voyeuristic sadist perspective, like I'm not saying I'm a voyeur or a sadist. I'm not. Like I have a lot of empathy. I don't think I could. I can't imagine working in a school like that. But yeah. Again, I haven't like written this out. This is totally off the cuff, and there's so many different directions I could go and so many different stories I could tell. But it's quite personal, and we live in the age where oversharing on the internet is just so easy. You just click a button, and you talk to a bunch of people you don't know about stuff they probably shouldn't know about you. But if it can help people appreciate their lives, one thing I do when I'm depressed now is I'll read books about North Korean prisoners or American prisoners. You know, people in war torn nations. It's yeah, it makes me feel less bad about my current circumstance where I'm free. You know, I'm not going hungry, and you know, as much as I'm going through maybe emotionally, I still have my basic freedoms. So just be glad this place doesn't exist. It got shut down, I think, in 2002. It was such a strange feeling when it got shut down. Like, I was really happy for all the kids who escaped, but there was a part of me that was like, felt lonely and sad that like no one would ever know from now on what I'd been through. Not that I would wish this on other young kids, but yeah, I always had this fantasy to rent a van and to just like get a bunch of strong dudes and just roll through the school and like rescue kids, you know, take a bunch of kids back to like a hotel room and everyone would just like kind of chill out and like talk about what they've been through, and then the next morning we'd wake up and everyone would just like go off and live their lives, and I might not see them again, but I would feel good about myself that I like rescued kids out of this bad situation. But obviously that never happens, and now it doesn't have to happen. And yeah, and what in a way I think the internet age is good because like these places I don't feel like could exist now because they would get. I mean, they probably do still exist. I'm sure they do, especially in places outside the U.S. and Europe. There's probably all sorts of like weird reform schools, but I mean, people would talk about it online, and people might go there and try to rescue these kids. But back in the mid '90s, the internet wasn't really a thing that most people were on, and yeah, although I did find some stuff written about this school once I got out in support groups, and yeah, there's a Facebook group. I survived the DeSisto School, so I'm gonna post this there and see if anyone wants to collab with me because it's just kind of boring and lonesome just doing this all by myself, and it's hard to really get that feeling going. I mean, I'm a pretty shut down person anyway. It's hard to really get me psyched. I could talk about abuse I suffered or that I witnessed with the same tone of voice, with the same straight face, and that doesn't really make for a good video. So I'm gonna wait. The next time you see me talk about this, it'll be with somebody, probably with the split screen over Zoom, if I can get Zoom going on this Chromebook, or Skype maybe. So yeah, that's it for now. If you have questions, post the questions in the comments section, and I'll try to get to them in the next video. Because yeah, I would like to talk about this experience. I have this feeling inside me that like I need to make what I've been through like matter towards others. I have a friend, she's a psychologist who went there with me. And part of me is jealous, like envious of her because she's like successful in her parents like well in society's eyes she like makes a lot of money psychoanalyzing or psychologizing people. But I mean, one thing I've realized in life meeting people who are like high and low on the like class financial spectrum is that, being broke and being rich, I mean, it makes a big difference in your lifestyle, but it doesn't necessarily make you feel good inside and make your parents proud or all these silly things that we care about. Well, I mean, well-being and feeling, like you have worth and stuff is, definitely not silly, but yeah, making money definitely doesn't change it that much because I've had a lot more money than I have now at various points, and these issues deep inside me remain untouched. So anyway, that's what this is about. I'm trying to like educate people about places like this. Well, this place in particular. Trying to remember it for myself and have some catharsis and maybe let it go, and give other people who've been to places like this a chance to talk about it. So if you want to collab with me, just put in the comments. Yeah, that's the best way because I get an email about comments because I'm small time here on YouTube. Like 300 people are watching this, so I can read everything and respond to everything. And I've kind of kept it that way on purpose. I took a video editing course in school. I don't know, maybe I'm keeping myself at this level on purpose, but I would like to like, in general, I'd like to like expand a bit, and I know I gotta like skill myself up to be able to do that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Say goodbye, Ava. What? I didn't make this cat this fat, don't blame me. She's sweet though. All right. Yeah, questions. You have questions, I'll give you answers.